Hello there, my name is Jumpy. Something that I really love is amusement parks. I haven't had the chance to go to one in a long time, but what's reinvigorated my interest in them is that I started watching some YouTubers that cover roller coasters and parks. Something else I love is horror films. It's a good genre. It's got movies like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies and Underworld. So what happens when you combine amusement parks and horror movies? You can get some cool stuff like the ending of Child's Play 3 or the beginning of Final Destination 3. But what if I want more? I'm talking about scary movies that have plots that are entirely based around an amusement park or a specific attraction at a park. Well, I've got two such films that I'm going to talk about today. The first of these is Dark Ride. I've seen this one multiple times before. It was released in 2006 as part of the After Dark Horror Fest, which featured quote-unquote 8 films to die for. I was hanging out with my older brother one evening in 2006, and he told me about the Horror Fest. We looked at the movie theater showtimes, and we picked a random one to go see. Obviously, the movie we chose was Dark Ride, which was distributed by After Dark and Lionsgate. I enjoyed it enough to get it on DVD, and I rewatched it multiple times. I'll never forget that the back of the box misspelled the word attraction one of the times it used it by leaving out the letter R. So it said attaction. I don't think that was an intentional pun. Just bad quality control. I later saw some of the other Horror Fest movies on DVD. Unrest, Wicked Little Things, The Grave Dancers, and The Hamiltons from 2006. And also from the next year, The Deaths of Ian Stone, Borderland, and Frontiers. The last of which has the S in parentheses. I don't remember if the fucking movie explains why or not. It's probably referring to some intangible frontier. The last movie I saw was part of the third Horror Fest, and it was Perkins 14, which is directed by the same guy who did Dark Ride. None of these are amazing, but I didn't hate any of them at the time. Frontiers is the one that stood out the most to me because it was so intense. Since I'm focusing on the movie Dark Ride today, I want to mention that I've also been on a few dark rides in real life. My favorite one was called Phantom Theater, and I got to ride it a few times when I was a kid. It was located at Kings Island in Ohio from 1992 until 2002. It had tons of wonderful animatronics and an awesome theme and so much personality. I recently watched a YouTube POV video, and it was the greatest blast of nostalgia. I'm very thankful that video exists. I'm going to link that in the description. Back to the movie Dark Ride. It's been well over a decade since I last saw it, so I was very curious to see how much I would enjoy the movie now. The story begins at a New Jersey amusement park in 1989. 2 girls decide to ride the Dark Ride, and they are killed inside, so the ride is shut down. Many years later, some college kids decide to go to New Orleans for spring break. These people are Kathy and her ex-boyfriend Steven. Then there's Steve's roommate, a film buff kid named Bill, played by Patrick Renna from The Sandlot. And seriously, outside of this movie, where else can you see Patrick Renna from The Sandlot? Nowhere, that's where. And there's also Kathy's roommate Liz, played by Jennifer Kelly Tisdale, who's Ashley Tisdale's older sister. Lastly, there's Jim, who's some guy that Liz hooked up with once. Is any of this really important? No. On the way, Bill finds a brochure advertising the grand reopening of the Dark Ride where the murders took place. Unfortunately, they're a few days early, but they get the amazing idea to spend the night inside the Dark Ride. After that, they pick up a hitchhiker named Jen and they arrive at the amusement park and break into the ride. And then we get a slasher movie. What I do like about this movie is the humor. Even though the characters aren't great, they have some fun moments. It made me smile a lot, even if I didn't laugh out loud too much. One of my favorite moments is when Bill quotes the film Midnight Cowboy, and then mentions that it's the only X-rated movie that won the Oscar for Best Picture. The scene then cuts to the other characters for reaction shots, and they are absolutely disgusted at this information for existing. I loved this the first time I saw this movie, and it's still funny to me 17 years later. Then later on, Jen the hitchhiker starts talking about music, and it has similar reaction shots to everyone being disgusted, including Bill. It's a fantastic running joke. Then her story gets creepy, but it's funny before that for sure. And there's a scene where Bill reads a poem that's inscribed in a restroom. But I will never forget Bill's reaction to this. He says, "Poetic but true," which is a quote that I need to use more often. When everyone starts running around the dark ride and dying, it's entertaining. I really love the spooky animatronics and sets they use. While they're not the most effective I've ever seen, there are a few decent jump scares that will give you some nice pops of ejector airtime. Ejector jump scare time. Dark Ride can also be very graphically violent, and it's all in good fun. I don't want to overanalyze this one, but I've always noticed the coincidence of the killer breaking out and returning to the Dark Ride right around the time it's reopening. It just seems like this would be a good place for the authorities to look for the killer, and they never do, which is good, because the movie's events wouldn't happen if the police had already caught the killer before the kids arrived at the Dark Ride. So no, I'm not docking points for that. Also, I've never been the biggest fan of the ending, but it's not a huge issue for me overall either. I'm just letting you know in case a weaker ending is a deal breaker for you. After revisiting this one, I still think the movie is a blast. It's not a masterpiece, but it holds a special place in my heart. I'm gonna give it a solid 6 out of 10. I'll admit there's nostalgia going on here, but you might have a fun time with this if you're into slasher movies. Now I know I use profanity in my videos, but I need to apologize in advance for the title of my next movie. It's called Hellfest. I know. Aside from calling it Heckfest, what can you do? Maybe they should have tried to get the rights to call it After Dark Horror Fest. That would have been better. This one was released in 2018. It's another movie distributed by Lionsgate. They are really cashing in on this amusement park horror trend. The movie was directed by Gregory Plotkin. I think all of his movies are autobiographical because he's related to their plots. Hellfest is also about some college kids. Our lead character this time is Natalie, who goes to visit her best friend Brooke. Brooke now has a roommate named Taylor, and Natalie has never gotten along with Taylor and didn't know about this living arrangement in advance. And there's also Gavin, who's some dude that Natalie has a crush on, and who likes her back too. I didn't care if they got together. Then there's a couple other people too. Gavin scored them all VIP passes to Hellfest, which is a ginormous traveling horror amusement park. I'm gonna be honest, I don't understand the logistics of this park. It's so elaborate with all of its attractions, including many mazes. It takes up so much space, and I can't imagine how much planning this took to set it all up. These kinds of things are usually only open during Halloween season, and I don't remember anyone saying anything about it operating during other parts of the year. If the movie makes a direct reference to how they operate other than the park moves around, I missed it. I'll admit I only watched this movie once. Apparently I will only watch something twice for one of these reviews if it has rest and stop in its title, and only if they appear in that order. So this excludes the movie Stop or My Mom Will Rest. But that doesn't matter anyways, because I wouldn't watch that movie, even if it really did exist. And yes, I'm aware that that doesn't rule out Rest Stop 2. And no, that's not a promise that I'll watch it either. But the whole Hellfest thing on this scale seems impractical to me, but I'm just going to suspend disbelief here too, like I did for Dark Ride. Natalie had never even heard of this absolutely mind-blowing park, but everyone else is hyped. Some of them start talking about how a couple years ago, some guy murdered a woman at Hellfest in a different city. Nobody believes them, but there's some dramatic irony going on. We as an audience know that these characters aren't full of shit because we got to see that murder during the movie's opening scene. Then some random menacing dude shows up at the park and puts on a mask. We find out that this is the same killer from a couple years ago. I guess he found his calling and that he just follows Hellfest wherever it goes. He walks around and bumps into a random woman. Then he walks past a snow cone stand, which has a knife that is conveniently located on the edge, and he grabs it. It's weird. I always thought they used a razor to make shaved ice, but apparently they use a knife. Who knew? Then the killer starts chasing after that woman. Inside one of the mazes, some of our lead characters see that random woman hiding, and then the killer enters. They're convinced that both of them are actors with the park, so Natalie tells the killer where the woman is hiding and watches him kill the woman. After they leave, the killer stalks Natalie and her friends for the rest of the night. It's rude, because she helped him out back there, and he's not grateful. This movie wasn't the best. What hurt it the most for me was that the dialogue is pretty bad. I thought some of the characters are annoying, but I realized that it was just their dialogue and not their delivery. Amy Forsyth, who plays Natalie, does an okay job, and I would like to see her in a better role. Likewise, Bex Taylor Klaus plays Taylor, and I could have liked their character a lot more with better jokes. Coincidentally enough, I will be seeing both of them again because I plan on watching a couple of horror TV shows at some point. Forsyth is in season 2 of the anthology series Channel Zero, and Taylor Klaus is in the Scream TV series, so hopefully I like both of them more in those shows. Hellfest is a short movie, but it feels longer than its 88-minute runtime. There are way too many cheap jump scares. It does have a few moderately effective moments. The scariest thing about it is that it's pure coincidence and bad luck that the killer is after them, and that Natalie inadvertently helped someone else die. But nothing else is really that frightening. What really kept me interested was the props and the attractions themselves. They are pretty cool and would be fun to see in person. I'm gonna give another shout out to Kings Island. The last time I went there was when I was in high school. It was around Halloween, and I got to go on all their mazes and haunted attractions, and that was a lot of fun. Seeing those kinds of things similar to what I saw at Kings Island in the movie Hellfest is pretty cool too. There is one scene I want to single out. It's a scene where the movie sets up something absolutely ridiculous, and I was 100% hoping that if they tried to pay it off, it better fail because it's so unrealistic. I was relieved when I was correct. This is an instance where I'm glad I predicted the movie, because I would have been very annoyed with it if it had gone in the other direction. Hellfest isn't the worst thing I've reviewed for this channel, but it was a bumpy dark ride. And hey, that joke works for this movie because it also has a dark ride in it, along with its many other attractions. I'm barely giving this one a 4 out of 10, and it's not something I plan on rewatching. If somehow Dark Ride and Hellfest are your only two choices for a movie to watch, Dark Ride is my pick. I like it more than I probably should, and it's entertaining and sick. Poetic but true. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.